The terminal at JFK shimmered beneath the soft sheen of morning light. Travelers rushed past one another like currents in a river, some late, some lost, most invisible to one another. But one woman moved differently. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She walked as if the ground itself knew how to make space for her. Her name was Celeste Morgan. Dressed in a slate blue pantsuit, crisp but unassuming, Celeste carried nothing flashy, just a small leather satchel and the kind of presence that comes not from privilege, but from knowing who you are. Her dark curls were pulled into a low bun. Her heels clicked softly, precisely, as she moved toward Gate B-18, where Flight 2097 to Los Angeles would begin boarding within the hour. She held a first-class ticket, seat 2A, to be exact. And she had earned every inch of that seat. But Celeste wasn't here for luxury. She was here for observation. No one at the terminal knew that the calm, composed woman weaving through the crowd was, in fact, a federal compliance auditor assigned by the Department of Transportation. Her mission was to evaluate patterns of discrimination in high-tier airline service, especially those that seemed to disproportionately affect passengers of color. This was not her first covert audit, but something about this one felt heavier, more charged. From the escalator, she glanced toward the security checkpoint and caught the briefest flicker. A couple whispering, eyes darting toward her. She said nothing. She had seen that look before, not outright hostility, but quiet confusion, as if her presence in the terminal was surprising, as if something about her standing in the first-class lane didn't quite compute. Celeste took a long breath, then stepped forward. She moved with efficiency, not fanfare, no selfies, no shopping bags, just a quiet authority that didn't need explanation. At the security gate, she greeted the TSA agent with a soft, "Good morning," handed over her ID and boarding pass, and passed through without issue. But even as the metal detector cleared her, she felt it again. That gaze, lingering a second too long. At Gate B-18, a group of sharply dressed passengers clustered near the velvet ropes that marked the first-class line. Among them was an older man in a tailored overcoat, a woman in oversized sunglasses balancing a Louis Vuitton tote, and a few tech execs glued to their phones. Celeste took a seat by the window, away from the crowd, and began reviewing mental notes. Policy loopholes, past passenger complaints, inconsistencies in service delivery. This wasn't just about being treated equally, it was about being seen without suspicion. 20 minutes before boarding, the gate agent emerged. A tall woman in her 40s, hair pinned up in a tidy twist, name badge glinting under the LED lights. Karen Whitmore. Celeste watched quietly as Karen began arranging documents on the podium, plugging in the microphone. When Karen's eyes landed on her, they paused, not with welcome, but calculation. Here we go, Celeste thought. At 9:02 a.m., boarding for first class was called. Celeste stood, straightened her jacket, and walked toward the front of the line, ticket ready. The moment Karen saw her up close, her smile faltered. The warmth that had greeted the man in front of him, brief but polite, vanished. Karen scanned the boarding pass, paused. She said, squinting at the screen. Seat 2A? Yes, Celeste replied calmly, offering her ID again. Is there a problem? Karen's smile returned, tight this time. I just need to double-check something. Could you please step aside for a moment? A small hesitation, a small inconvenience. But Celeste had seen it too many times to call it small. Behind her, the next passenger, a young white man in a designer hoodie, walked past with a nod from Karen and was waved through with ease. Another woman followed, no questions asked. Celeste remained standing. This wasn't unusual, but it was telling. After a minute of typing, Karen looked up. "Okay, you're good to go," she said almost reluctantly. Celeste nodded, thanked her, and boarded. But inside, she knew, that moment, fleeting, subtle, and coated in plastic courtesy, was not the end. It was the beginning. And it had just been documented. The first-class cabins shimmered under soft ambient lighting. Leather seats wide and pristine, small brass accents gleaming on armrests, in a curated calm only money could afford. Celeste Morgan entered quietly, scanning the aisle with a composed gaze before settling into seat 2A. She placed her satchel overhead with the same graceful precision she'd carried through the terminal. For a moment, it was almost easy to believe this flight would pass without incident. She allowed herself a deep breath, then leaned back into the plush leather, letting the tension in her shoulders release. Her fingers hovered briefly over her seatbelt, ready to buckle. But then, footsteps hurried and decisive. She looked up. Karen Whitmore, the gate agent, reappeared, this time not alone. Trailing just behind her was a flight attendant with auburn hair pulled taut in a sleek ponytail. Her name tag read Veronica. Both women were headed straight for Celeste. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear but in preparation. She had seen this pattern before. "Miss Morgan," Karen said, her voice suddenly firmer, edged with something sharper than formality. "We're going to need you to come with us. There's been a change in seat assignments." Celeste blinked once, then answered evenly, "I'm sorry?" "There's been a seating conflict," the flight attendant added less confidently. "We have to reassign this seat for a premium passenger who just checked in. We'll need to relocate you to another seat in coach." The words struck with a practiced rhythm, as if rehearsed. Polite, cold. A murmur fluttered from a nearby passenger. The silver-haired man in seat 2B glanced up over his glasses, clearly eavesdropping, though pretending not to. The woman behind them, sporting noise-canceling headphones and a silk scarf, tilted her head just enough to catch the exchange. Celeste stayed still. "This seat," she said slowly, "was purchased in my name days ago. There's been no announcement of overbooking, no equipment change. Why am I being asked to move?" Karen's smile had vanished entirely now. "You'll need to speak with customer service after landing," she replied briskly. "For now, please comply so we can proceed with boarding." Veronica, visibly uncomfortable, shifted her stance. Celeste's eyes flicked briefly to the man standing in the aisle a few rows back. Tall, white, well-groomed. He wore a navy blazer and held a sleek briefcase. His eyes darted towards her C, T, 2A, then to the flight crew, waiting, impatient. Ah, there it is. Celeste knew the unspoken assumptions blooming beneath the surface. She had seen them simmer before, that a woman like her couldn't possibly be the rightful holder of a premium seat, that perhaps she belonged somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere invisible. "I'd like to see documentation of the reassignment," Celeste said calmly, "or speak to a supervisor. Otherwise, I will remain in the seat I lawfully paid for." Karen bristled. "You can take this up with the airline later. You can either move or be removed from the flight entirely. Your choice." The tension hung like smoke. Veronica glanced nervously at Karen, then back at Celeste. Still, Celeste didn't raise her voice, didn't argue. She simply stood up, slowly, quietly, and retrieved her carry-on from the overhead compartment. There was no scene, no protest, just the kind of silence that echoes louder than anger. But her mind was already working. Every moment had been logged. She walked the length of the aisle, past luxury, past champagne trays and idle stares, until she arrived at row 24 in economy, a cramped middle seat wedged between a sleeping man and a woman furiously typing on a tablet. There was no space in the overhead bin, so her bag had to be stashed 4 rows back. From a paid seat in 2A to an unsolicited downgrade. No apology, no voucher, no dignity. She sat down, expression unreadable. As the flight took off, she pulled out her phone and began to document everything. Gate agent's name, seat reassignment, timing, behavior, passenger observations. Then on a blank page, she wrote 3 words in bold: watch, confirm, report. She glanced sideways as a black woman across the aisle quietly requested a blanket twice, each time ignored. But when the white man next to her flagged down a flight attendant for the same request, it was brought immediately. Subtle, consistent, chilling. Celeste didn't need confrontation to do her job. She just needed the truth. And this flight was providing more than enough of it. 40 minutes into the flight, the cabin had settled into its usual lull, tray tables down, headphones on, conversations dulled into a low hum beneath the drone of the engines. Celeste Morgan, now wedged between 2 indifferent strangers in row 24, might have looked like just another economy passenger catching up on work. But beneath her calm exterior, she was listening, watching, documenting. She noticed how the flight attendant in her section, Veronica, moved quickly but selectively. A young white couple received their drinks within minutes of asking. An older black man, seated 2 rows up, waited 20 minutes and had to request it twice. Across the aisle, a black woman had quietly asked for a blanket again. She had been ignored until the white man beside her raised a hand. Then suddenly, the blanket arrived with a warm smile. Celeste took note: the timing, the tone, the subtle prioritization. It wasn't overt. That was the danger of it. It was just invisible enough to deny, and just visible enough to damage. She was mid-sentence in a note when a ripple of low murmurs spread down the aisle. Heads turned. Something was happening up front. A man's voice, tense and unfiltered, cut through the cabin. "I've been pressing the call button for 5 minutes. My wife can't breathe, and you're ignoring us." Celeste straightened. In row 6, a woman was slumped in her seat, her face red and swollen, lips puffy, eyes watering. Her husband stood helplessly beside her, pleading. "She said she was allergic to nuts. You told us the meal was safe." Veronica came rushing forward, panic etched across her face. "Sir, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't help when someone's going into anaphylactic shock." Celeste was on her feet before anyone called her. She wasn't a doctor, but she knew this was urgent. "Does anyone have an EpiPen?" she called. A man in row 5 jumped up. "I do. Hold on." He rummaged through his backpack and passed it forward. Celeste stepped into the aisle to assist. The husband, hands trembling, jabbed the EpiPen into his wife's thigh. For a few excruciating seconds, no one breathed. Then, slowly, her chest began to rise more steadily. The cabin exhaled in collective relief. Veronica fumbled for the intercom. "Is there a medical professional on board?" "We've had an allergic reaction in row 6. Assistance requested." As the woman stabilized, Celeste stepped back, letting the husband cradle her. But her mind remained sharp. Something about the situation felt too familiar. It wasn't just a medical oversight. It was negligence, and possibly something deeper. The woman had flagged her allergy. She had trusted the crew's word, and yet her warning was dismissed because she wasn't loud, or white, or seen. Celeste returned to her seat in economy, heart pounding. And YT, no one had asked how she knew what to do. No one had thanked her. She was still just a middle-seat stranger to them. 20 minutes later, the captain himself came walking down the aisle. His Navy uniform sans jacket, eyes alert. "Miss Morgan," he asked gently, "may I speak with you for a moment?" She rose, quietly following him and the lead flight attendant, Lourdes, to the galley behind first class. The curtain closed behind them, shielding them from curious glances. The captain cleared his throat. "I understand there was a situation earlier with your seat." Celeste folded her arms loosely, not confrontational, just steady. "Yes, I was removed from my assigned seat without explanation, apology, or compensation." Lords looked genuinely remorseful. We just found out what happened. Typically, if there's a double booking, it's handled before boarding. But the gate agent, she left the plane before we could clarify. The flight attendant told me she was just following instructions. Celeste said nothing. The captain shifted. We'd like to offer you another seat in first class. Seat 4C is available, with our apologies. She didn't move immediately. Why now? She asked, voice low. Why not when I was first challenged at the gate? He paused. We're trying to correct a mistake. That's all I can say. Celeste finally nodded. Very well, but know that I'll be documenting everything, and I have concerns I plan to raise formally. Lords bowed her head. We understand. Celeste returned to her original class, not 2A, but 4C. The damage had already been done, but now the cracks were showing behind the scenes. As she sipped the glass of champagne Veronica offered nervously minutes later, she noticed something even more damning. Veronica whispering angrily to another flight attendant in the galley. You were the one who told me to move her. I only followed the gate agent's instructions. This is going to cost us. If she files a complaint, we're done. Celeste looked away, gaze calm, fingers tightening gently around her glass. She didn't need to confront them. The unraveling had already begun. The champagne in Celeste's hand had long gone warm. She hadn't touched it since the whispering in the galley. Her eyes remained on the back of the seat ahead, but her mind was a flurry of motion. She had the names, she had the dialogue, she had seen the hesitation, the fear, and, most importantly, the unraveling. Veronica's words were still echoing in her memory. You told me to move her. I only followed the gate agent's instructions. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. A chain of decisions. As the flight glided westward over the Rockies, Celeste checked her phone. A message appeared from her colleague, seated quietly in coach. Nathan Rivera, 12:47 p.m. Heard you got bumped. Everything okay? Celeste Morgan. 12:50 p.m. Back in first, Captain intervened. We need to compare notes. Nathan was her mirror in this mission, a fellow federal auditor assigned to observe crew behavior and service consistency from the economy section. They never traveled seated together, never greeted in public, but their communication was precise, synchronized, and most of all, silent. Veronica returned, clutching a snack basket like a shield. Miss Morgan, I just wanted to check if there's anything I can bring you. Celeste met her eyes, not coldly, but clearly. A glass of water, and perhaps a little honesty. The young woman blinked, then nodded as if understanding this wasn't just about refreshments anymore. She disappeared again, and Celeste let her gaze drift toward the window. The world below was tranquil, snow-capped peaks casting long shadows across valleys bathed in late morning light. It was a deceptive contrast to the quiet reckoning unfolding within the metal walls of the plane. Minutes later, Veronica reappeared and, with a glance around, slid into the empty seat beside Celeste. Her expression was taut, hands fidgeting with her name tag. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely audible above the hum of the engines. I think I messed up. Celeste said nothing, letting the silence give weight to the confession. Karen, the gate agent, told us before boarding that someone had tried to scam their way into first class. She never gave a name, just said if a certain seat had a mismatch, it had to be flagged. She swallowed. I assumed she meant you. I didn't question it. Celeste leaned forward slightly, her tone quiet but firm. Did she say anything else? Any reason she believed the seat was illegitimate? Veronica's eyes welled. She said, people like her don't usually fly up here unless something's been manipulated. Her words, not mine. It wasn't just bias, it was deliberate profiling. Celeste inhaled slowly, fighting the sharp sting behind her eyes. She wasn't surprised, but it still landed like a blow. And what about Carla? She asked, the senior flight attendant. She hasn't been seen since the emergency. Veronica hesitated. Carla was the one who called Karen after scanning your boarding pass. I overheard it. She said, better check this one. We've had problems before. Celeste's jaw tightened. This wasn't two isolated misjudgments. It was coordination. I can't let this go, Veronica. You know that. Veronica nodded. I figured. That's why I came. I don't want to be part of that kind of system anymore. If you need me to talk to someone to give a real statement, I'll do it. Celeste studied her for a long moment. Behind the guilt, she saw something else. Resolve. You'll need to be ready for pushback from management, from union reps, maybe even colleagues. I know, Veronica whispered, but if someone doesn't say something, it'll just keep happening. Celeste reached into her blazer and passed a small business card, unmarked except for a phone number and agency initials. When we land, call this. You'll be routed to the Office of Aviation Equity. Tell them I referred you. They'll know how to proceed. Veronica took the card with trembling hands. She tucked it into her apron, then rose to return to duty. Celeste watched her go, then exhaled deeply. The dominoes were shifting. As the seatbelt sign blinked on for descent, Celeste began collecting her documents. Notes, observations, names, timestamps. Across the aisle, Carla reemerged, disheveled, flushed, avoiding eye contact with every passenger. She slid into the jump seat, whispering furiously to a younger flight attendant beside her, I'm not taking the fall for that gate agent's mistake. The reply came coolly, you might not have a choice. Celeste's lips curled slightly. No raised voice, no press conference, no name badge flashing federal credentials, just the quiet weight of accountability. Closing in. The plane touched down at Los Angeles International Airport with a soft jolt, the landing gear kissing concrete beneath the veil of early afternoon haze. Outside, a golden shimmer bathed the tarmac. Inside, the silence felt heavier than the descent itself. Paramedics boarded quickly to assist the woman who had suffered an allergic reaction. She was stable now, sitting upright, breathing with effort but clarity. Her husband stayed by her side, hand never leaving hers, expression taut with fury and relief. As they wheeled her out, he offered a terse nod to the cabin crew, but not a word, not forgiveness, just distance. In the front of the plane, Celeste Morgan gathered her things slowly, not out of fatigue but calculation. Each movement carried the same composure she had worn since the moment Karen Whitmore tried to erase her from seat 2A. She adjusted the strap on her bag, gave a final look around the cabin, and stepped off the plane. The terminal was buzzing as usual, families reuniting, chauffeurs waiting with signs, people dragging carry-ons across polished floors. But for Celeste, it all fell into a dull blur behind one singular focus. Truth made official. Just past the gate, near a quiet corner by baggage claim, Nathan Rivera waited. He leaned casually against a column, but his face was serious. You good? He asked, handing her a cold bottle of water. I'm ready, Celeste replied, accepting it. We have more than enough. They compared notes for 20 minutes. Veronica's confession, Carla's quiet guilt, Nathan's observations in the coach, repeated delays in service, contrasting tones between white and non-white passengers. No direct slurs, but a pattern unmistakable to anyone trained to see it. A few feet away, Carla Jensen rolled her luggage past them, eyes darting nervously. When she realized who was standing nearby, she froze. Celeste turned calmly. Miss Jensen. Carla stopped. Her posture stiffened. Yes, she said, voice low. I wanted to inform you that I'll be filing a formal report with the Department of Transportation regarding today's incident. Your role, your comments, and your decisions will be part of it. Carla's face tightened. I was just following the gate agent's call. She said, Celeste interrupted, her tone not angry, but unflinching. You removed a passenger from a paid seat with no verification, no offer of accommodation, and no procedural review. That's not following protocol. That's following bias. Nathan stepped in, voice steady. You had a chance to ask questions. You didn't. That silence is its own decision. Carla swallowed hard, then whispered, Please, I didn't know who you were. Celeste gave her a long look. You still don't. She and Nathan walked away. Behind them, Carla remained frozen, caught not in confrontation, but consequence. 2 days later, in a sleek glass-walled conference room at American Star Airlines Los Angeles regional office, Celeste and Nathan sat across from two senior executives, Andrea Lee and Joseph Peters. Both wore the corporate calm of people accustomed to control, but as they flipped through the file handed to them, testimonies, timestamps, policy violations, crew names, their faces paled. We take these matters very seriously, Andrea began, and we appreciate you bringing this to our attention, but surely there's room to interpret these as isolated incidents. Nathan met her gaze. Isolated events don't come with matching blueprints. Joseph cleared his throat. We'll launch an internal review. Gate agent Karen Whitmore will be suspended pending investigation. Not enough, Celeste replied firmly. The problem is not one employee, it's cultural. Her words weren't loud, but they landed like a verdict. Within a week, the story began to unravel publicly. Veronica's anonymous statement, later made official, revealed that Karen had told crew members to watch out for those kinds of passengers. Carla, under mounting pressure, admitted to overhearing and complying. Internal emails surfaced, showing Karen had flagged Celeste's ticket as potential fraud, despite no system error. Karen Whitmore was fired. Carla Jensen was placed on probation. Veronica Lee was quietly promoted and transferred to lead DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Flight Training. The Department of Transportation fined the airline $2 million and mandated anti-bias training across its staff nationwide. Weeks later, Chicago O'Hare. Celeste stood in line at security again. Same calm posture, same Navy suit, same boarding pass. This time, first class was just a seat, not a statement. No one questioned her. No one stalled her. The gate agent scanned her ticket with a neutral smile and waved her through. She nodded in return and walked on. Each footstep was a quiet reminder. I don't need to be seen to have power. I need to be heard. And I have been. Moral of the story: prejudice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers from behind polished podiums and professional smiles. It appears in the moments that don't make headlines, when someone is quietly told, not you, not here. But silence isn't always surrender. Celeste Morgan didn't shout. She didn't protest. She watched. She listened. She documented. And she acted. And that is sometimes the most powerful revolution of all. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Speak up, share it, and subscribe to stories that demand better, because the sky belongs to all of us.